Right, so now that we're able to log out, the next step is of course managing the logging in. So let's head over to the login view controller.swift, and we're going to import again the Firebase framework. And then inside this IB action login pressed, which if you remember is linked to this button. So what we want to happen here is of course log in the user. And Firebase has a neat little method called sign in with email and password. So the email is of course going to be the text that's already in the email text field, and the password is similarly going to be the password text field dot text. And finally, we're looking at our completion block once more, and that's of course the callback we get from the Firebase module once the signing in process is complete. So if you select that placeholder and go ahead and hit enter, or simply just double click it, both it's the same thing, Xcode will automatically write in the required structure, the template structure. And you'll see that this is looking very familiar. It's of course a closure. And that closure is going to have two parameters which are going to be populated in the Firebase API side, and then it's going to bring it back to us. And the two parameters are of course some user details, so we'll just call that user, and an error parameter if there was an error. So inside this closure, we're going to write an if-else statement to check to see if there were any errors. If there were errors, then we're going to write a print statement that prints out the error. And if there were no errors, then we're going to print out login was successful. So try and complete the challenge by yourself. All right, so this is easy. This is just an if-else statement. So if error does not equal nil, i.e. there was an error, then we're going to print out that error. But if there were no errors, then we're going to print out login successful. Great. So if the login was successful, then we probably should perform a segue that takes the user straight to the chat view controller. So again, here's a challenge. Go ahead and remind yourself of what that segue was called, and then try and trigger that segue so that we can take the user to the chat view controller once the login is successful. All right, so did you remember how to do that? We can head over to the main.storyboard and we can check to see what that segue was called. So the identifier is go to chat, and we can copy it over here and then we can take it back over here. So if there were no errors, then we're going to perform segue with identifier that's go to chat, and the sender of course is self, i.e. the current view controller. And of course, remember, because we are inside a closure, we have to specify the keyword self before we call this method. So let's go ahead and run our app and see if it works. All right, so let's go over to the login screen. And if you remember, I registered a user that had an email with 1at2.com and the password was 123456. Let's go ahead and log in. So it printed login successful down here, and I got taken straight to the chat view controller. So, well, hey, that worked exactly as we wanted it to. So in the next lesson, we're going to be populating this chat view controller. As you can see at the moment, it doesn't really do much. It's completely blank. So we're going to learn about these components, which are called table views, and we're going to set ours up in order to receive some messages. So I'll see you on the next lesson.